Welcome back to Gut Check Time. I'm your host. Today we'll be talking about NFL Week 11, gambling picks and predictions. But can you please hit that like button and please subscribe if you like this video at any time and you want to see more content like this in the future? Thank you. Now this video probably won't be out. It definitely won't be out actually until after Sunday. So this is mostly just to get it on the record, see where my record stacks up at the end of the year. But let's get into it. 7-2 New Orleans on the road versus 3-6 Tampa Bay. New Orleans coming off their most disappointing loss of the season to Falcons team at that point only had one win on the season. And the Falcons have talent. You can't underestimate them. That's why I had them as my Super Bowl pick. They have talent all over the field. They haven't lived up to that talent. To me, it's not as bad of a loss as people think it is. And they're going to get revenge this week. The Buccaneers just aren't that good. And it's going to be, even though it's at home for the Buccaneers, I still feel like the Saints obviously are the better team and one of the 5 best teams in football. The spread here is 5.5. The Buccaneers are getting 5.5 points at home. I don't care. I'm taking the Saints minus 5.5. I have the Saints winning this game 33-17, so take the over of 49.5 as well. I think the Saints are a really good football team that just slipped up last week. Guess what? The Patriots won the Super Bowl last year. They lost to the Miami Dolphins. The Saints can still win the Super Bowl even though they lost to the Falcons. There's great parity in the NFL, and that was just an example of that. Next up, we have the Jaguars at the Colts. And we have Nick Foles coming back for his first week. I think it's going to take him some time to get in rhythm. That's why I think the Colts are going to win this game. Jacoby Brissett also comes back. I'm not sure about T.Y. Hilton. I think he's still probable. They really need to get him back to be a top-notch team in the AFC, but they can still make the playoffs. This division is wide open. I think it's going to be between Jacksonville, Indy, and Houston. And I wouldn't have given Jacksonville a shot if Gardner Minshew remained the quarterback, but Nick Foles is back. I think he's going to help out a lot when he gets his rhythm back. But he hasn't gotten it back yet, so I'm going to take the Colts 26-21. So I'm taking the Colts minus 2.5 here, and I'm taking the over of 43. All these spreads are brought to you by BetNow.eu also as well. Not a sponsor, obviously, but that's the site I get them off from. Next up, Buffalo versus Miami. It's going to be kind of a surprising game for me. I think Miami's going to keep it close. I think Buffalo is a good team. I don't think they'd be a good team in the NFC. In the AFC, they're a good team because the AFC is the weaker conference this year. Miami, trying to tank, and their players won't let them. They've won 2 games. Brian Flores, I will say, isn't trying to tank. A coach is never going to try to tank. The players aren't going to try to tank. But management is, and Miami's put their team and coach in a bad situation with the players they have. But guess what? They won 2 back-to-back games. They could win this game. I don't think they will, but they could. It's at home. I think Buffalo does win the game, though, 24-20 because of their defense. Their defense is spectacular. Josh Allen, all he has to do at this point in his career is not turn the ball over and make 1 to 2 big plays a game. I'm going to take Buffalo, like I said, 24-20, and I'm going to take the over of 40.5 points here. So take Miami plus 6.5. I'm taking Miami plus 6.5, but I'm taking the over of 40.5. Next up, Houston versus Baltimore. I think it's going to be a good football game. I think these teams are similar. I do think the Ravens have a better defense, though. And again, if they can get pressure on Deshaun Watson behind that atrocious offensive line that Houston still has, they've gotten better, but it's still not good enough to protect a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. He's your prize back there. You should have 2 to 3 all-pro offensive linemen. That's where you should build at. But they haven't. I'm going to take Baltimore to win the game, but it's going to be a close one. I'm taking Baltimore to win 31-28. So take the over 51 here because that gets you to 59, and take Houston plus 4.5. Next up, New England versus Philadelphia. A rematch of the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Obviously, both teams are vastly different from where they were then because Nick Foles obviously isn't starting for Philadelphia, and a couple players on the defensive side of the Patriots aren't there. Trey Flowers in particular, and obviously, but you still have the big names: Belichick, Peterson, Brady, and then Fletcher Cox. People like that are still involved in this game. I'm going to take the Philadelphia Eagles to win this game 26-23 at home. And I'm taking the over-under here is 44.5. I'm taking the over of 44.5, and I'm taking Philly plus 4, obviously, if they win the game. Next up, Monday Night Football. This video will be out by the time this game's on. So if you want to bet on this game, I'm going to take the Chargers to win the game, actually, in Mexico City. I'm taking the 4-6 Chargers to beat the 6-4 Chiefs. I know it's a semi-upset. So I'm taking the Chargers 30-27. I'm taking plus 4.5 here in the over at 52. The reason for this is the Chargers are starting to get healthy. I know they lost to the Raiders. The Raiders aren't that bad of a team. The Raiders probably are going to make the playoffs, to be honest with you. And I'm surprised by that. I am shocked, to be honest with you. And I think the Chargers are a very good football team when healthy, and I think they're getting healthy. They were missing both their tackles versus the Raiders last week. I believe one of the tackles is supposed to be back this week. I'm not sure about the other. But both Michigan, all bets are off. I think the Chargers could easily lose because when you can't protect your quarterback, Philip Rivers has to put his foot in the ground and throw it after a second half. Otherwise, he's going to get sacked or at least pressured to where he's throwing in a phone booth. He does not have time to throw the football. And obviously, with the new offense coordinator, after they fired Ken Whisenhunt, you've seen the last couple of weeks versus the Packers and the Raiders, they wanted to establish the run, which I think is smart because with the bad offensive line, take a little bit of pressure off, try to hit play action, short passes down the field instead of trying to go deep. So I think that's a good philosophy, especially when you're missing both tackles. Now, when the tackles come back, I would like to see them air it out and go down the field more. I think that's more of a strength of Philip Rivers and his wide receivers. You have Mike Williams, a big play threat, and Keenan Allen, a big play threat. So I would like to see that. But until then, I don't mind them running 20 to 30 times and running play action. In fact, that's what they should do. I'm going to take the Chargers, obviously, like I said, though, 30-27, taking the over a 52. Next up, we're just going to be running down this list of games. The Jets versus Washington, I'm going to take the Jets. After what Sam Darnold said last week, I think he kind of has to back it up. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but if they win 7 games on the year, I think that's a success. I had them at 7-8 wins this year. That's where I thought they'd be. I actually think I had them at 8 or 9, but 7-9, somewhere in between there. They still have holes. You know, their defense isn't spectacular. It's good, and their offensive line isn't great. I do like Le'Veon Bell. I like Sam Darnold. That's a good backfield. They need one more wide receiver as well. I like Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder, but those aren't number 1 guys. But I am going to take the Jets to beat Washington because Washington is atrocious from top to bottom, from their owner to their general manager to their coach, and then we don't know who the hell the quarterback is going to be. Dwayne Haskins will play. Who knows how well he'll play. Next up, Dallas versus Detroit. I'm going to take Dallas in this game. Matthew Stafford's not playing. That's as simple as it gets for me. When your quarterback, who's a good quarterback, isn't playing and your defense isn't spectacular and you don't really have a great running game, the Lions have never had a great running game, I'm going to take the team that's the healthiest, has a better running back, has a better quarterback, has a better defense, and that's Dallas. Next up, Atlanta versus Carolina. I'm taking Atlanta. I think Atlanta's going to get on a hot streak. I know I said I would never choose them again, and I just believe in this team. I like the talent. I believe in talent in professional sports. I believe that eventually will win out. That will win the day. I think Atlanta's going to start to roll off some wins. The problem is I don't think they can win 8 games in a row or 9 games in a row to get them to 9-7 is what they need to be to make the playoffs, and I don't see that happening. I think they could win enough to get them to 8-8 though, and maybe some teams falter and somehow they sneak in. I don't see that happening. We'll see though. And if they win this game, I believe they would have beaten the Saints once, the Panthers once. So that's 2 wins, and I don't know if they played the Buccaneers yet. I don't remember that. So maybe they could win the division, and then if you win the division, it doesn't matter what your record. You could be 6-10, win the division, and get in the playoffs. So I'm going to take Atlanta to beat Carolina for the simple fact I don't believe in Kyle Allen yet, and I believe Atlanta's talent eventually is going to win some big football games like they did last week. Denver versus Minnesota. My Broncos on the road versus the Vikings. Vikings are a good football team. They're going to win this game. I think Denver is improving, and I think obviously I had them making the playoffs this year. I was wrong about that. But watching this year, compared to last year, we have players where I'm like, wow, he's a good player. I'm glad we found him in this mess that is going to be another losing season. Because next year, if Drew Lock is who I think he can be, and we draft an offensive lineman and a corner, I think we can make the playoffs next year. I really do. I think this team is going to make a jump next year. You've seen it. They've lost against the Jaguars, the Bears, and the Colts, all on a last-second field goal. Usually when teams do that, you'll see in close games, when you see in close games a lot of losses, the next year it kind of reverses and they start to win those games. So if they were 2-1 in those games this year, they would be 5-4 on the year. So they're not a bad football team, unfortunately. But the good thing is also you're going to get a high draft pick now. Hopefully, in my opinion, they would get someone like Jeffrey Okudah, an offensive lineman like Tristan Rifts from Iowa, or a CeeDee Lamb type at wide receiver. We do need one more wide receiver. Courtland Sutton is a stud, and I like Tim Patrick coming back from injury, but the Vikings are going to win this game. Arizona versus San Francisco. I'm going to take San Francisco, although I think this will be a close game. I think Kyler Murray gives a lot of people problems, and I think he's going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. He's got accuracy, he's got mobility, and he's got a strong arm. Usually when you have those three things, you're going to be at least a decent quarterback. So I'm going to take San Francisco to win the game, but I like Arizona's outlook on the future for this football team. Next up, Cincinnati versus Oakland. I'm going to take Oakland. Cincinnati's the worst team in football. They have a really good shot of going 0-16. I think their only winnable games are at home versus the Browns, and I don't know where they play the Dolphins. I believe it's down in Miami the week before the weekend of Christmas week. I think it's December 22nd. They play the Dolphins on the road. Those are the two winnable games. They don't win those two, they're going 0-16. And the state of Ohio will have two of the three 0-16 teams in NFL history, which is pathetic. I'm going to take the Raiders to win. Next up, Chicago versus the Rams. Sunday night game. It's a terrible Sunday night game. I'm not going to watch it, to be honest with you. There's other stuff I'd rather do than watch that game. Both teams have regressed significantly since last year. If this was this game last year, I would have loved to have seen it. The high-flying offense from the Rams versus a good offense from the Bears with an electric defense, the best defense in football. That would have been a hell of a matchup. I would have loved to have seen it. But I'm going to take the Rams to win this game just because Mitch Trubisky is terrible. And I don't even think last year, I think he was okay. But the thing is, his confidence is gone. And he's one of those guys where he has average talent. So if his confidence is shot, he's going to have nothing. He really is. And we've seen that. And I wouldn't be surprised if Chase Daniel comes back and starts to play for this team. The Rams need to start winning some games. They play in a very hard division, and they're going to end up missing the playoffs after making the Super Bowl last year and losing. So they really need to start rattling off some wins here. I believe they beat the Bears, and they rattle off this win. That'll do it for my gambling picks preview and prediction video of NFL Week 11. Thank you for watching. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Thanks.